Cadillac got the West, man. Deuce got the Chris. So, man, what they gonna do now? Put the West and the Chris together, man.
Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Atlanta, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Birmingham, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Oakland, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Down south, showing no shame. Got the clubs and the club, we shaking that thing. Got the young player coming up on the run down. See the club and then we slide. Like real tight, bodies and rice from the weekend G to the end of the night. Got the screw coming out, got to get the club high. Don't get screwed, don't have to die. Everybody wanna be down with the side. 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 Everybody trying to get down with the side. Everybody wanna be down.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This is your boy Tight, and I got BG's with me. What's going on?
Free Lunch Podcast. What's happening there? What's going on, Tight?
Not too much, man. Just enjoying the holiday break. You know, having a few days off and trying to enjoy the holiday break. Had the opportunity to go to the movies and see a few films today. So it's been a good time. Now it's time to recharge and relax and get ready for 2015.
Bigger and better. Expecting some great things from this podcast and from this movement, this New South movement that's pushing it. So like you, I'm very excited about being able to do what we have done up to this point and looking forward to what we can do from this point moving forward.
I agree. I agree.
What that weather looking like? Is it freezing?
Actually, it's not. It's supposed to get cooler the next few days, but today it was it was in the 50s, surprisingly. So try to take advantage of that. It was gloomy outside though. What about in Alabama?
The same thing. Kind of rainy and dreary. I guess we officially have made our way into winter. So yeah, it's that cold weather, that weather that I don't like at all. But it's that time.
What about the boots? You don't like them boots?
Oh no, that's it. You took the words right out of my mouth. That was gonna be my next statement. Although them knee boots come out and them pea coats and all that kind of stuff. But I don't like the freeze, but I'll take it.
So 2015, we're gonna have a lot of variety of interesting podcasts and interesting topics. Really interested in today's topic. How would you categorize today's conversation? Is it heavy? Is it gonna be light? How would you kind of categorize this particular topic in comparison to the other topics that we've discussed?
Man, I think this is gonna fall in the middle category, cause we've really gone heavy, especially the last couple of weeks. It's been some real heavy, thought-provoking topics, and then we've also had those where we just been straight clowning. So I think doing this was gonna fall somewhere in the middle.
I'm nervous about this one.
You nervous?
I'm nervous about this one. I think the conversation and a few viewpoints may be surprising to some and disturbing to others.
Ain't no better way to kick 2015 off than to have a little controversy.
It's definitely going to be some controversy. So before we even get into the topic and before I give some background on the topic, you know what time it is.
Well, hold on. We got to talk about this 2015. You got any New Year's resolutions? Anything on your list that you're going to do different this year than you did last year?
Do I have any new? Not really. To continue to try to walk in my journey and kind of walk in my path. Each and every year I just try to reflect on what worked, what didn't work, and then for 2015, really just focus on, try to focus on what I can do to just become a better me, and just try to look at different areas. Of course, the podcast is going to be priority from me on a personal perspective, really continuing to try to grow the brand for Free Lunch. But in addition to doing that, really just becoming a better me and trying to just study me and learn me. What about yourself?
I like that. For me, I'm just looking at ways that I can better use my talents, to make my community and the people around me better. So, i.e., using this podcast and i.e., using, some of my thoughts in the blog and other avenues to get some opinion across, some perspective across that may hopefully spark some energy in other places. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on this year, really going heavy with allowing those talents to speak.
I agree with that. And I mean, in addition to that, I think empowering is kind of going to be a theme, and really trying to not only empower myself, but like we talked about in the previous podcast, just empower those around me and figure out ways to just take that next leap and that next step from a financial freedom perspective, and really venturing out into land and property. From a free lunch perspective, really just trying to brand the podcast and the blog and the website, and understanding that as we grow, we're going to have to be mindful of the criticism and the critiques that we get from listeners, and really just try to accept it and eliminate any noise and continue to push forward.
Exactly. So all the listeners out there, keep listening, keep spreading the word, because we got some big things coming.
But also, New South movement is not BG and I. It's the entire community, and it's really just trying to figure out how to continue to push the South forward, try to the Southern culture, whether it be the arts, whether it be the clothing, whether it be the music or the poetry, any other talent or gift that you may have. Just trying to get the listeners to get on board this movement and really push the Southern culture forward. And in a lot of ways, a dominated East Coast, West Coast platform and media perspective and personalities, and just trying to let the South be heard in a lot of ways is essentially what we'll be trying to do in 2015.
South got something to say. All right, dog. It's on you. You ready?
I am, and I struggle with a song today, and this may be totally off topic, and in 2015, just trying to keep it more, trying to simplify things and not be too controversial with the song topic. So just to give you an example, I thought about going with Ludacris area codes. And for the listeners that don't know what that song is, you should Google it. Go to YouTube, type in Ludacris, type in area codes, and you'll get a sense of the direction that I was potentially going to go with. But not to be too controversial, I decided on this one right here. You ready?
I'm ready. Get to him.
Well, I got a woman way over town. That's good to me. Oh, yeah. I got a woman way over town. That's good to me. Oh, yeah. She gives me money when I'm in need. Yeah, she's a kind of friend indeed. Said I got a woman way over town. That's good to me. Oh, yeah. What'd you think? Better choice?
Good choice. That's a more appropriate choice. I was nervous about that high note.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't get nervous. Huh?
You proving yourself to be efficient when it comes to that vine. You got range, you got versatility, and you choose good songs.
Hey, I struggle. I could have went with Ludacris area code.
No, glad you did.
And as we continue to grow, I find myself growing with the song choice.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good segue into what we're going to talk about today. And before we even get into the topic, I wanted to kind of get some background as to how the topic came about, and really just from that perspective, once we get that whole background, just really just dive right into it, because I think there's so many directions we can go with on this one that we just keep it open-ended and just kind of bounce questions and ideas off each other. What you think?
Let's do it.
All right, so just to get some background and some perspective, so shout out to to Peter Bailey and the Nightcap series that he does on YouTube. For those of you that are not familiar with Peter Bailey, highly recommend going to YouTube, subscribing to his channel, and really just doing some research and listen to some of his past interviews that he's done. For today's topic, what I want to do is just give you some background as to an interview he did with Chad Ochocinco. Chad, he actually did two interviews. It became so popular. The first interview that he did a follow-up interview to kind of discuss some of the conversation that was left undiscussed in the first interview. And essentially what that first conversation talked about with Chad was centered around this whole idea of polygamy and having multiple women or what have you. And Peter Bailey basically took the perspective that he believed that man was essentially created to be with one other person, one woman. Whereas Chad made what I would like to call probably one of the best arguments or best debates to that entire thought process and concept, from the perspective that he actually believes that the natural order is for man to be with multiple women. So essentially saying that even though he may be with one woman for a few months, he loses interest, and at that point he could see himself being with multiple women or dating multiple women or what have you, simply because of the natural order of man. So for myself, BG, a few other friends, where we essentially went back and forth on this whole idea as to try to address that question. And for sake of conversation and for sake of debate, I'd like for us to kind of tackle this conversation. BG, get your thoughts on, do you believe from the creation of a man to be with one female, or do you believe that man was created to be with multiple female?
And the answer to this is multifactorial. You say natural. As far as nature goes, man is built and designed to be a sexual being, especially with our sex drive and how we are sight and sound. We're very physical by nature, and we're very sex driven. So in nature, we have sex and we populate, and we do that thing without using a whole lot of discretion and all that type of stuff. However you want to put it, in nature. So to answer your question, the natural order, I would say, yes, man is built to just sow his royal oats, right? But in terms of belief and what I feel like we are, what we are to do as it relates to fulfilling our purpose and being, having domain over the universe and the earth, I feel like it is best for us to be in a monogamous situation to where it's one man and one woman. So to say that would be to say that a man that strives to be with one woman is acting outside of his nature, is going against his nature to achieve like an ultimate position or an ultimate place by being with one woman. I say it's supernatural.
So here's my challenge. And here's where the debate comes in, right? Right. So you would agree that it's natural for men to be, or you would say that it's natural for a man to be with multiple women.
So yeah. Because it's so easy. Of course, it's so easy. Our nature is so easy to act. It's easy to act upon that nature. But when you start going against nature, and for the sake of this conversation, talking about being with one woman, going against it, it's like, being on a whole nother level when you can truly focus on that and execute that in its fullest sense. So that was my opinion. That's been my argument each and every time that we've had this discussion, which we've had pretty regular in our circle.
We can go in many directions with this, right? So the first one I want to go in is this whole idea of what makes the American culture correct when you have other cultures that actually practice the husband having multiple wives. So who is to say, because one argument that we share between you and I and the group was that being monogamous is more of a American culture kind of idea and maybe more of a Western culture value sort of perspective. Whereas in a lot of Eastern cultures, you may see husbands, or even different religions, you may see husbands with multiple wives. Who is to say that the American culture way is still accurate in the most appropriate way?
Well, American culture, the way that we know it now, is really based upon the religious part. So the people that came over and colonized and whatever their religion was is what they put into play, which for us has become law in terms of like being married and marital situation. Polygamy, or having more than one spouse, is illegal in all 50 states. So it's just become law, likely due to what they established based off of, their religious beliefs. And so that's why our society here in America is the way that it is, to where we feel like polygamy is wrong and monogamy is right, versus the Eastern world, where you have a lot of religions that is okay. It's okay. It's accepted. It's expected to have multiple wives.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much multiple husbands for the woman. And then that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that's what really played a role into why we perceive how relationship setups should be, is just based off of that founding and those early Americans that colonized the continent.
I agree with that historical perspective, but my question again goes back to who is to say that that's the right way? Because if naturally a man was created to have to as a sexual being, okay, answer this question here. Would you agree that a human is an animal?
Okay.
Then we learn that in science. So how many other animals do we know that have monogamous relationships? I can't name one. So since I can't name one, and since we are animals, couldn't we use what's the mathematical term? A plus B is equal. What is it? If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then C is equal to A. I forget which theory that is, but ultimately, what I'm getting at is to say if we're animals, and if I can't think of another animal, someone mentioned a penguin and someone mentioned the elephant in my debate, and I didn't agree with that. I didn't agree with those two examples, but why would we as animals be tied down to one woman if by nature we're animals and we were put on this earth to be sexual predators and to reproduce?
You can do all that, but that could also say that all animals are created the same, and that we all have the same level of discernment and the same capabilities. But there are some things that we do differently because we're humans that dogs do that we don't do. A dog will waddle around in his own stuff. We don't do that. And I mean, it's just there are some things that make us distinct from other animals. And I think the biggest thing, though, with this is, you say who determines, what is right and what is wrong. At the end of the day, although most of us are guided by our religious belief and our cultural beliefs when it comes down to these things, but at the end of the day, it's personal. It's really personal preference. It's really what you want to do. for me, I see, just being out here having, multiple partners, being in multiple relationships is just being status quo because it's easy to do because that's your nature.
So I need two things. Number one, I need you to make it plain when you say supernatural, right? Because for me, it's not connecting as to why that would be labeled as something supernatural. I'm still not sold on this idea.
To be in a relationship with one person where y'all moving in the same direction and you're building this universe around your union, then that's being great. That's going from good, the norm, average, to being great by being able to do that and do that effectively. You see a lot of that just based off of the amount of fortitude and the amount of focus that it takes to be on that level. And so for me, it's like you want to be at a higher plane. You want to be working at a high level of efficiency, and you want to be great. So for me, in my own decision making and my own discernment, that's the way that I see it outside of, what I've been told and what I've been seeing, and looking at this whole thing. That's some next level stuff when you can step outside of that nature and be able to share that space and to share your everything with that one other person, which is some perfect world stuff. It comes with its challenges, but when you look at people that are doing big things that really have impact, a lot of times you see them with a spouse or a partner that is pushing them along. That spouse is motivating. So you're able to put that energy and focus it into that one individual versus having all your energy and your effort spread out across multiple people.
Okay. Even with the example you just gave me, when you say that you'll have a partner that'll push you along, right? In a lot of those instances, in those cases, those men still have, I don't know the politically correct word, but they have side pieces, or they'll have a mistress. So even though they may have the love of their life, they still have another woman on the side that they may be with or they may entertain. And I can give you a laundry list of those individuals, right? Of successful men that have made it and that were considered leaders, and some even won the Nobel Peace Prize, but still had other relations. And so even though they may have tried to live this supernatural life, in a lot of ways, was that going against the natural order of their creation? You see what I'm saying?
They were going against their natural, up until the point to where they fell into the natural, because it's easy to do that.
Why do you want to live this supernatural life? Like, help me understand the benefit of this supernatural life, because make it plain for me, because if you're telling me that I can win a Nobel Peace Prize and still have a side piece on the side that may not be anyone I love, but may be just someone that I'm naturally supposed to be with, then what's the benefit of this supernatural that you speak of? And then the second point I ask is, if you did an honest evaluation, not naming names, but just looking at friends and people you know, how many of those individuals have had relationships that have been 100% monogamous?
If you look at that, if you look at the end part, of what happens if the man gets into an extramarital relationship, you also have to look at, well, what is that marriage founded upon? Was that marriage just founded upon she came from a good family, she had a good career, so let's get married? They got together based off of some faulty reason, and then they get into the relationship and he finds out his needs not being fulfilled, and so now he's just dipping out and getting all these other things.
No, so but make it personal. Make it personal. And when I say make it personal, look at your personal, not just your inner circle, but just people you know. Yeah, they don't have to be close friends. They don't have to be. They're just people you know, associate friends, close friends. how many of those relationships, if you even put a percentage on it, to me it would sound like it seems that the majority of those were in the guy maybe having multiple women, more than one.
I get you like this. It's 30, they say 30 to 60% of all there's infidelity in 30 to 60% of all marriages. And most of those situations is men cheating. And most of those occur to people who are under the age of 30, which is our age group. Personally, when you talk about those relationships, it was that. It was people, getting married before they really were ready. They just had all these other reasons for getting married versus being at a place to where they knew what they wanted out of life. They saw the compliment in that other person, and it was a decision of, hey, we're going to move together. Most of the situations that I saw was either somebody making a bad decision or making a decision of going into something as serious as marriage before they themselves were ready for the responsibility and all of the expectations that come along with being in those situations. And so from that point, it's easy to quit. Your nature tells you to quit. Your nature tells you to quit when something gets hard. Your nature tells you to steal something because it's right there. But it's that discipline that tells you, okay, well, I know it's right there, but there's a consequence at the end. So you ask what the benefit of being disciplined and seeking this supernatural spot. Once again, when you're in a place to where you got another spirit that believes in you totally, that is there for you totally, that is motivating you totally, and all of that energy is going into you, and you're bringing all of that energy back into that person, you're going further. You're going to far exceed the potential that you had when you're just as an individual. I believe that. But when you're spread thin, when you're dealing with different women, you're not giving yourself to those. You can't give yourself to all those movable parts and still be as productive as you were if you're focused. And then of course you're gonna have the stress of one of them women wanting to be more a part of your life than what you're giving her right now. And that's going to have an effect on you too. So the more focused that you can be and the more disciplined that you can be, the more energy I feel like you have for endeavors that really matter.
So what do you say to so when you got these cultures, i.e. Muslim culture, East Coast culture, and I'm sorry, in the Eastern Hemisphere, when you have these different, like Osama bin Laden, for example, having multiple wives, what do you say to those individuals that don't have that problem? So if they I mean, you could be successful. Is it supernatural at that point then if you have multiple wives, or what is that argument?
But when we talk about spiritual impact, because in his position and what he was doing as a dictator, as well as having multiple wives, what was the position of those wives? How did those wives feel about it? Did they feel like they were on the same, I guess, level as he was? Did they see him as a partner, or did they see him as a superior? And if they saw themselves as second class to him, then what does that do for the overall culture? It makes it a male-dominated culture to where you're not getting that influence that you likely need from the women. If you have the influence of the women working at a high level with the influence of the men working at a high level, what you see now could be multiplied by 10. Mm-hmm. But because it's so lopsided, you got to ask the question, is that whole place, is that whole area working at its full potential? Because you basically made it a male-dominated thing. Yeah, it works for the men to have as many women as he wants, but what does it do for the women? What does it do for the children?
I think that's a good point, and I think my answer to that question may include that of the women, but the other thing, and the other thing I kind of put on the table is from the religious standpoint, right? And we have a lot of religious scholars that listen to the podcast and give biblical perspective, and I'm pretty sure they'll have a rebuttal for this particular question. And I'm pretty sure I hear about it as well. But I guess the question then becomes, I'm not sure how familiar you are with King David in 2 Samuel, when he was essentially lusting over Bathsheba, and essentially ended up having an affair with her.
Right.
And then if you continue to read 2 Samuel and finish that story, you know, God essentially tells Samuel, basically was scolding him, and then says, if you would have asked for it, I could have gave it to you, even though Samuel had wives, and throughout the Old Testament, throughout the good book, you have different kings and different relationships, and when you see David having multiple wives and having concubines and these other Solomon and these other protagonists in the Old Testament, and I'm pretty sure there'll be a New Testament rebuttal. But what do you say to those examples?
Culturally influenced. That's just the way that it was in that time. That was the expectation of the people, and that's how it was. So for me personally, I don't use that as a guideline for what I see. And like I say, I don't impose my beliefs on another person. If you want to go out here and you want to have multiple, then that's do your thing. But I do know from my time and being in situations like that, to where you shuffling and you are juggling, you know, multiple women, that there's a lot of added stress, because you're working. Each one of those women is different, and so you're having to remember what the triggers are for this one, and making sure that you don't get it crossed over with the other one. And then at the same time, it's like at some point, just based off of
but does the juggling affect the natural order?
It affect my natural order when I have to be worrying about it. And then, you know, like I say, on the flip side, one of those women is going to feel some kind of way about it. And she gonna let you know about it. Now, if you just a cold, you know, it ain't gonna bother you none. But me, I got a conscience, man. And so, like, I don't want to be out here hurting nobody. Mm-hmm. So by having that feeling, and like, man, I'm out here doing this, and she thinking this one thing, or she's wanting this one thing, and I'm just giving her half, and she's feeling like I should be giving more. I got to deal with all that, man. That's going to affect my natural order, because now my attention is more so on either hiding this situation or alleviating this situation, or just being an asshole and not caring about it. Or I could just say, well, I'm just going to kind of simmer down and try to put my focus into one person, to where I you know, if I do have any stress or whatever, it's just going to come from this one direction versus it coming from all around me. But that's just me. Right. That's just what I found to work better for me. But I don't impose that on anybody, because, you know, different things work for different people.
See, I struggle with this, and like I said, we went back and forth and we debated this one, and all of these different rebuttals or these different questions I threw out there were, to be quite frank with the audience and with the listeners, were kind of questions that I had, right? So even from the conversations that we had, listening to the Peter Bailey Nightcap series with Chad Ochocinco, I still kind of understood Chad from his perspective of this natural order. And the reason I say that is because why is it natural for a guy, when he sees an attractive looking woman, whether he's in a relationship or not, to turn his head? Because it's natural. Like, that's who we are. That's who we are. So because of that very point, I kind of personally debated the question internally with myself, because I just wanted to have a real justification of why I believe one way or the other. And it really wasn't from the perspective personally of because we live in the American culture and that's the way it is, or because Christianity speaks that you should have one wife, and this whole idea of Adam and one rib. I kind of look for my personal truth, and and I know I told you this, and you wasn't trying to hear any of this, BG. But even from my personal perspective, it wasn't until I had a conversation, essentially at a bar, with a group of people, and we were kind of having this same conversation, this same debate. And the best answer I personally got was by the bartender when she mentioned karma. And even though that wasn't the answer for me, it actually triggered the answer that I'm going to share with you and the listeners, BG. And I think I shared this with you. And I want to get your... Go ahead.
You going to tell the people where you was at?
At the bar. That ain't good enough?
Hey, if that's what you rolling with.
Yeah, that's what I'm rolling with, the bar.
That's good enough.
So the bartender basically said karma. And what triggered for me, or what made me think of the answer to this particular question, was more around the idea that we as human beings have emotions. And because we have emotions, and similar to what you kind of echoed earlier about consciousness, and you're not out there trying to really hurt no one, it kind of made me think of this whole idea around what if the shoe was flipped on the other foot. So rather than it being the man, let's look at it from a female perspective and say just as well as a man can have multiple wives, say that a woman could have multiple husbands or be with multiple men, then how would I feel, or what would my emotion be if I had multiple wives and I had another one of my wives, a woman I was dating, and she had multiple husbands? How would I feel? And it was from that self-evaluation where I got my answer that I don't believe that we're created to be with multiple women, or to have multiple marriages per se. And the reason is because of the emotion that would be triggered if the shoe was on the opposite foot. And I know that's not really in line with this whole idea of the supernatural and this whole idea of any type of biblical answer that one could have. But my personal truth kind of was triggered from that whole idea that was sparked by the karma answer that I was given. And it was more so just putting the shoe on the other foot and seeing how I would feel. And because we as human beings have this ability to reason and this ability to make decisions and to evaluate emotions, I think that's the reason why, for me anyway, that I think that you shouldn't be with have multiple wives. What you think?
That karma involves that discernment to even think about, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but there's a likelihood that the same thing could happen to me. You have to be conscious in yourself and conscious in the moment to even think like that.
Right.
So I think that is where you kind of get outside of your nature and start thinking about the emotions and the things like that. So that's spot on. And I feel like that what you just said is embedded in a lot of what I was speaking about earlier, is just being able to know that, there are some emotions and something on the backside of, your actions and all those type of things. So it did come from a very unexpected place, but that's a very deep and logical rationale for what we're talking about and how, we approach relationships and stuff like that. So yeah, that was good. That was right on time too, because it seemed like it came right at a time where we were really been talking about this. No,
it did. Because I really was having an internal conversation with myself, in addition to the conversation that we were having as friends and as boys. And even though you have these conversations, I think that whether it's this conversation or any other conversation that we have, I think we as individuals and as people, we result in the cliche answer. And a lot of that may be religious. It may be because it sounds right, but how often do we really internally evaluate a question and take our personal truth from it?
And how it makes us feel.
Because I think it's too often, and I actually want to do this next. I want to do a conversation on this whole idea of religion, and really using religion and this whole idea of God being internal, external. Because I think that from that conversation, I think that's another example where we allow, whether it be an old cliche or whether it be something that we were taught without any reasoning and we just went with it, rather than us as we get older and as we really start to make decisions and really start to understand different situations and circumstances, have a foundation and have our truth as to why we believe that, you know?
Yeah, and you said it, because when you're just going with something somebody told you and it really has no internal meaning to you, you don't have any reference point to apply certain lessons and certain principles because there's no rationale, there's no feeling behind it. And so it's easy to turn away from certain things because it's like that don't make sense. But if you just get in tune to yourself and go by, well, I don't want nobody to do that to me, so I'm not going to do it to anybody else. And then there's your answer. But you've got to have, it's got to be from a internal place, and you've got to really be living it personally and not so much based off of what somebody else said or what society tells you it should be. Feel it for yourself and live through yourself.
I agree with that 100%. So that's essentially all I had on the topic. At the end of the day, I think we all have our own personal truths, and I think we all have our own personal beliefs. But whatever your truth is and whatever your belief is, I think you should be open with the person of your partner or the person of the opposite that you're with, and make certain that whatever your truth is, it's clear to them. I don't think it's fair for people to for you to have do infidelity and to have multiple relationships if the other person isn't on board. If that's something that the person you're with understands and that's something that they agree with, then to each his own. But if you're doing it mischievously and behind that other person's back, and you're doing something, I mean, even from that perspective, if you're doing it behind somebody's back, then it's not right. So you should even reevaluate that. But it's just one of those situations where I noticed a lot of close friends and the family or whomever were in multiple relationships and cheating and all this sort of thing, and sort of sparked the question, just trying to understand, if you see this many people having multiple relationships, like, are we even naturally supposed to be with one person? And my truth or my belief is that, based off of karma and this whole idea of if the shoe was on the other foot, how would you feel? For me, I think the answer is that you should be with one person. That's what works for me. Simply because I'm not out here trying to hurt anyone's feelings or trying to be despiteful and be hurtful.
I don't think it's necessarily the easiest thing to do.
Oh, definitely not.
To be in a monogamous relationship, but worth it though. I just feel like it's so much worth, like many other things that are not easy to come by. But once you get to that point, it was worth the journey. It was worth the sacrifice, and it was worth the time and the discipline to get there. So I see it in that same.
Because Chad even made an interesting point, and I don't want to prolong this conversation, but I do want to actually, because Chad essentially said in that interview, you find me a man with multiple options and I'll show you a man that's cheating. Do you agree with that statement?
Discipline.
That's
It's
100.
discipline. And that's what he said in his conversation. He said he lacked discipline. So you got to be disciplined because the women ain't going nowhere. You got to be disciplined and knowing that, okay, yeah, it may look good, but outside of looking good and all that kind of stuff, is it going to be good for you? It's going to be good for you in the long run. And all that comes in that whole, being able to think that thing through and all aspects. What is this going to mean for me? What is this going to mean for my family? If you got kids, what is this going to mean for my kids?
That's true.
And so if you have that responsibility, if you got this family, you got to be thinking about all that, because as we see that a lot of times it comes at a consequence. You mess around and have you something on the side, and then she stopped getting what she want out of the situation. Now it's all in the news. It's on social media. Now your family got to deal with this stuff.
This true.
So there's a lot that goes into it, man. And you just got to be thinking and be focused and disciplined all the time. I mean, we ain't perfect. Like, personally, I've had my situations. So I can speak from a place of experience and knowing how, the good and the bad, more bad than good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that you need to do to make sure that you're not hurting other people.
And there you have it. So
It is.
another interesting topic on the Free Lunch podcast. Anything else you want to add to the topic?
And I'm just blessed to be able to come and talk like this on this podcast and share it with people, and hopefully be sparking some thought and sparking people's minds and opinions across the country. So I'm just glad to be here. I'm just glad to be here.
I echo that actually, and really just want to, in 2015, and as we move forward and continue these type of conversations, BG, I'm interested in just people living out their truth and really just understanding why you have a belief in something and living out that truth, and more or less not getting rid of the old ways and the old cliches, and walking your personal journey and understanding why you have a belief in something, whether it's being in multiple relationships or being with one person. Just having some justification for that. So that's all I got.
So if you enjoyed this podcast, we got this one and we got a lot of more that we've done. Go check us out. FreeLunchPodcast.com, the new website. Also, if on Instagram, Free Lunch Podcast, and commentary. We've had some interesting commentary
yes.
with some pretty well-known people on Twitter. So
yes.
Like we say, this thing is booming. We making our way through it. So Twitter, Free Lunch Policy. Check us out sometime. Let us know how you feel about the Free Lunch Podcast. If you have any topics or anything you want us to discuss, feel free to drop us a line.
Well, I got a woman way over town that's good to me. Oh, yeah. Said I got a woman way over town that's good to me. Oh, yeah. She gives me money when I'm in need. Yeah, she's a kind of friend indeed. Oh, I got a woman way over town that's good to me. Oh, yeah. Free Lunch Podcast, and we are out. Peace.
Everybody wanna be down the side. In the club.